Good morning. Thanks for joining me on day 20 of this 31 days through the book of Proverbs. Each day we look at one chapter of this book of wisdom, hopefully pull some truth out of there that we can apply to each of our lives. So today in chapter 20, I want to talk about three themes that I saw in here, and there's a lot contained in this chapter, but I want to talk about integrity, honesty, and faith. Three things that come through. I think that we all could use more of in our lives. So let's talk about integrity. In verse 7, he says, "The godly walk with integrity. Blessed are their children who follow them." So this idea of living, godly people walking, living their lives to a high standard, to God's standard. This is about character. This is about doing the right thing, even when we don't think anybody's watching. But really, the benefit is not only for us in living a life that is pleasing to God, but it says in the second part of that proverb, blessed are their children who follow them. That the decisions I'm making today are affecting the future of my children. That, with kids, and I've shared this before, I'm not sure where it came from, but it's not mine, but with kids, more is caught than taught, right? They're watching, they're observing, sometimes they even listen, right? But they're watching, and what we do will instruct them more than what we say. So the writer of Proverbs here, King Solomon, is saying to walk with integrity, to let your children see that you are trying to live to God's higher standard because they are following. How I live today affects my family tomorrow and all the tomorrows after that. That we have that direct impact on the future of our children by the personal decisions we're making today. Children follow, they will follow. The question we have to answer is really two: where are we leading them, and how are we leading them? We can take this truth and walk with integrity and know that we will bless our children who are following us, because they will be another generation, the next generation of Christ followers who are trying to live with integrity. The next one was honesty. We see this in verse 10 and in verse 23. They're kind of similar, but false weights and unequal measures. The Lord detests double standards of every kind. Right? We talked about the things the Lord detests, the things that he hates. Um, these are an abomination to the Lord. False weights and unequal measures. And then in verse 23, he says it, the Lord detests double standards. He's not pleased by dishonest scales. So this idea of weight and scales and measures, and in this time there was, divers measures, divers scales, and the corrupt practice was to use a different stone for the weight, to weigh against for when somebody was buying, and they would use a different weight that would look the same, for when they're selling, so that they were getting a better deal when they were buying, and charging more when they were selling. And this is just the idea of honesty. Are we honest in our lives, in all of our dealings? Now, not all of us are business owners or in the practice of buying and selling on a daily basis, but God is not pleased by double standards, by dishonest scales. He detests double standards. So how do we live? How are we cutting corners when we can? Do we fudge the numbers a little on our taxes? Do we bump this expense report up a little bit? Do we take advantage when we can of that? This is personal integrity. This is about living a life of integrity, to the high standard. You ask a child, to cut something in half and share it with their sibling, right? And you're not going to, the not going to get a half of, 50% on each side, right? A child, if they think they're going to have to share it with their brother or sister, they're gonna cut one side much larger than the other because they're going to want that bigger piece for them, right? This is just part of who we are. It's ingrained into us in our human nature. To want to more than the other person. But God hates double standards, and we need to live a life of a high calling and do the right thing, be honest, live with integrity, even when no one else is looking, because we know that God sees. And then the other one was this idea of faith, of trusting God. In verse 24, and we've seen this already in multiple chapters, the Lord directs our steps. Right, that God is in control. He's directing the steps. But then it says, so why try to understand everything along the way? And I think there's a lot of us that get stuck in this circle of going around and around with God because we don't understand why he's doing something. And we want answers, right? Sometimes we even demand them from him. Uh, Isaiah 55 tells us that God speaking, he says, my ways are not your ways. My thoughts are not your thoughts. Sometimes I think even if God would explain to us why he does things, we probably couldn't comprehend the answer anyways. So he's calling us to live a life of faith, which means we take steps, one step at a time, without knowing. We're trusting him. Psalm 119:105 says that his word is a lamp unto our feet. You think about the mental picture of a lamp unto our feet. If you've ever been camping at night, you got to go to the bathhouse or somewhere, and it's pitch dark in the middle of nowhere, and you got this small lamp, right? We're doing the best we can to just take a couple steps at a time, but we really can't see. This isn't high beams on our car that are shining really far ahead of us and really wide and tall that we got a good picture in the dark. His word is a lamp unto our feet. We have to trust his word one step at a time. And the more he proves himself faithful, which he will, because he is, right, the more steps we will take. So it's really trusting him. Do we really trust God? Even when we don't understand, because we're not called to understand. We're called to live by faith. And then we see that God's bigger plan is in play, and we trust him more. So I hope that this psalm, for me, it spoke to me about integrity, honesty, and faith. And I hope that you've been able to pull some of that truth out as well. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow for Proverbs 21. I'll see you then. Thanks.